So I asked all my clients, like, what's the biggest thing that kind of you'd want to discuss with a registered dietitian, and
Mm.
gut health came up overwhelmingly. Like, and I guess it's no wonder because you see it at the moment, and it's almost like it's kind of becoming the answer to everything, or is it? So you see stuff like questionnaires at the moment as well. That since we've actually had our original one that didn't record of this,
Mm.
someone had a questionnaire where it just said, "Do you ever have a headache? Do you ever feel tired? Do you ever wake up feeling like you're not on top of the world? Or maybe you need to take this probiotic." Um, so there's loads of stuff there with IBS, bloating, like why someone feels bloating after certain foods, stuff like that. So I think going over the gut would be the most kind of helpful thing to do. So, but before we go into that, if you could just give a bit of background of what you've done and with like obviously working in the clinics and stuff, that'd be great.
Yeah, cool. So, as you know, Matt, I started off in sports science, studied at Loughborough, worked with a lot of athletes, both on the Olympic level and amateur level, and very quickly found out that nutrition science, more specifically, was my strong point. So, did my master's degree in dietetics. Spent 4 years working in the NHS. Worked at all sorts of different hospitals and different wards, GP centres, and obviously saw a range of patients. One of which being obviously, in those 4 years, saw literally thousands upon thousands of people that have either been diagnosed with IBS or some similar digestive health issue, and yeah, like I wouldn't, to be honest, I wouldn't consider myself an expert in that area, but because I've seen so many patients, I've had to do a lot of research. I've had to figure things out. I've had some fairly minor digestive health issues myself, which was partially motivated, doing that research and trying to figure out, the simplest, most practical ways to manage these sorts of things.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess that's me really.
Okay. Cool. No, thanks for that, Mike. So we'll start off. First question is I've put out a load of questions. I've actually got a load here, but quite a lot of them overlap. But it will be good to go through them. So Annette asks, why does my stomach swell when I eat bread products?
Good question. So, like we covered on the last call that didn't record.
Yeah.
So bread.
I guess actually, it'd be good if before we go into that, if you could just do a little overview of what the gut health digestive system and where we're at with it. Like, what is it? Because it's just people just say gut health, and it's just kind of like, what does it mean? Yeah.
Yeah. So most people think that their gut or their is like their stomach, right?
Yeah.
They would normally point to like where their belly button is. Most people consider that their stomach, and that's pretty much it. The reality is, in simplistic terms, your gut or your digestive tract, GI tract, whatever you want to call it, consists of everything from like your lips right down to your back passage, if you like. So that includes your esophagus, your stomach, you've got your duodenum, you've got small intestine, large intestine, you've got your bowels, like all of that. And it all plays a role in extracting nutrients from foods. So at different parts in the GI tract, your body will extract different nutrients, proteins, fats, carbohydrates, etc. So it all plays a role. When we're saying like gut health, that's really like what we mean is like the entire thing.
Yeah.
Cool. To get back to Annette's question though, like why does her her stomach swell when she eats bread? And the reason that's happening is like your digestive tract, especially in the large intestine, has a lot of different types of bacteria. So researchers will call this the microbiome or the gut microbiome, and it's just referring to the various types of bacteria we've got in those parts of our body. Like the microscopic bacteria, you can't see them, you normally can't feel them, everybody has them. And in a normal person, they might eat some bread and that's it, right? Tastes nice, cool, sweet. In somebody with even moderate digestive health issues, they might eat some bread, they might get some bloating, heavy feeling in the stomach, maybe even diarrhea, constipation, etc. And obviously that can be related to like celiac disease, but that's obviously not the topic of what we're talking about today. But in terms of digestive health, so certain types of starches and anything fibrous are massively fermentable. And by fermentable, we just mean that like the bacteria, they kind of like eat what you eat, and then they produce gas.
Yeah.
And that's what they're supposed to do. That's completely normal. But obviously, people who have too much of certain types of bacteria and others, that can produce more gas or less gas, and that presents itself as symptoms. So in Annette's case, she would get a bit of bloating.
Yeah.
Sounds like very mild symptoms, but that's fundamentally what's going on. That makes sense.
Yeah. So, what kind of swaps could she make if she wanted to reduce that? Like, so if she still wanted to have a slice of bread, but say she was eating, and this sounds contradictory, right? So say she was eating, I don't know, whole grain bread. So is that going to be more fermentable than white, or is there like, what's like a simple swap she could make or maybe try?
Well, yeah, let's just or anything, starch and fiber. So whole grain bread, massively fibrous.
Yeah.
So that's obviously going to be massively more fermentable. Which is why usually, usually for people with digestive health issues, when they try to eat healthy, and by healthy, most people would try to eat things that are brown, like oats, whole grain bread, seeds, legumes, lentils. All of these things are just going to create more fermentation, which means more gas, which means more symptoms. And the symptoms present different in different people. Sometimes it's just bloating, sometimes it's just distension.
Yeah. Sometimes
people get constipated, sometimes they get diarrhea, sometimes they get acid reflux, and like they present differently for different people. So it's just not massively straightforward. But at the fundamental level, like that's what's going on.
Okay. But because we're told that, like, obviously, because a lot of people would be told eat more fiber to promote gut health, and then even some people have said, well, is that a good thing that you're bloated because you're getting, like bacteria, like it's good bacteria, like is it because you're not used to it, like what's your views on that?
Yeah, not to be flippant, but that's a bit like saying if somebody's obese, that's a good thing because they're obviously well fed.
Yeah.
Right, which is, as we both know, you're a nutritionist, I'm a dietitian, we both know that's ridiculous because from the research, we know that people that are obese are typically malnourished.
Yeah.
Why? Because typically, not always, but typically the foods that they're eating don't have a lot of vitamins and minerals and that kind of thing. So it's important for people to separate the advice that is given to the general population, even by the government, right? It's just general advice to somebody without any clinical issues whatsoever. obviously the more clinical issues you have, the more your nutrition needs to be adapted. So when you see a government advert or anything else that says fiber's healthy, you should eat more fiber, that is true. From the research, we all should be eating about 30 grams of fiber a day. However, when you've got IBS or some other digestive health issue, I will promise you now, eating 30 grams of fiber a day will ruin your life.
Yeah.
Like, I've had patients in my clinic where their symptoms are so bad, they just have chronic diarrhea and they can't leave the house and lost their jobs, and it's just really intense.
Yeah.
And, you know, so you got to separate both. You know, it's a bit the same as, you know, if somebody's diabetic or, you know, like other clinical issues that revolve around nutrition, like you have to adapt them. So you can't just take the general population nutrition advice and say like, well, oats are healthy, so I'm supposed to eat them, but they give me diarrhea, but I'm supposed to eat them, so they must be good for me. You know, because it's not. Like, you know, having diarrhea every day is not normal. That means your digestive tract is malfunctioning, you're losing nutrients, and that's obviously not fun or pleasurable in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, no.
So that's what I would say to that.
Yeah, and also ultimately, like you said, if that affects the quality of your life, then that's your answer, right? If, you know, whether it's good or bad, no matter what anyone says, if you're then not leaving the house, diarrhea, which is then going to mean you're malnourished, regardless of what anyone says about gut bacteria, you know, or like eating this to be healthy, it's obviously not for you.
I'd agree with that.
So, what about proteins and fats in there? So we talked about bread. That's obviously a carbohydrate. We talked about starches and fiber. In terms of fermentation, where protein and fat stand with that?
So protein and fats, and by protein and fats, I like to make it clear what I'm talking about is, say, like chicken breast is protein.
Yeah.
Chicken thigh is protein. A slice of beef is protein. You know, a lamb leg is protein. Eggs are protein. You know, fats, olive oil. You know, eggs also have fat, etc. What I don't mean by protein is a breaded chicken breast or a breaded fish fillet, because people sometimes get confused. Obviously, you know, when you add bread to the mix, you've got starch, you've got fiber, etc. But protein and fat only foods aren't fermented. You know, and all that means is that the bacteria in your digestive tract don't feed off those foods. That's ultimately really all it means. And so you won't get any symptoms digestive health wise from eating just purely protein and fat. Like you know, the only potential issue that you'll have is you might become constipated. Not everybody does, but you might. Other than that, you won't ever get any bloating, distension, you know, or any of that kind of stuff. And it's for that reason, you know, when I've been working in clinic with people with IBS and, you know, similar issues, often recommend the 5-day challenge to them, which is just, you know, just something that I just came up with.
Yeah.
Just because sometimes people don't buy into the research and what you're telling them. You know, sometimes people need to experience it for themselves.
Yeah, 100%.
So for those patients, I would often say, look, like, just give me 5 days, eat nothing but protein and fat, and I promise you in 5 days your symptoms will improve. And 9 times out of 10, that would be the case. And so for me, when it comes to digestive health, I consider, you know, protein and fat only diet, not necessarily to be the best in terms of nutrient intake, but to be the safest in terms of symptom management.
Okay.
So I would say for anybody listening, like if they're ever stuck and they're just thinking, I don't know what's causing this, or, you know, etc. Like, honestly, the fastest way to get things under control, just do 3, 4, 5 days of protein and fat only. And then after that, like, there are certain types of starches you can eat that aren't fermented as much.
Okay. So,
So it's not like you have to be ketogenic or anything.
Yeah. So what would like a typical day look like in those 3 to 5 days for that like challenge, if you like, for someone trying to sort their IBS out or get some help?
Good question. So the simplest way I can describe it, as much as I hate to say this, but like if people think of like what a ketogenic diet is, that's essentially what those 5 days would look like.
Okay.
Most people think these days, because it's a bit of a trendy thing, they've heard of it, Atkins style diet. I'm not promoting either of those two diets as a long-term solution, but for those 5 days, that's kind of what we're talking about. So we're talking about fresh meat, fresh fish, low starch vegetables. So green vegetables are like fine. Low starch fruits, so berries are fine. Fats like eggs, olive oil, coconut oil, butter, like these are all fine. And yeah, that's the simplest way to think about it. Yeah.
Any vegetables that will be fermentable in particular? Obviously like Brussels sprouts, stuff like that.
Yes, it's just the ones with the highest starch or the highest fiber. Okay. So you've mentioned Brussels sprouts, cabbage, broccoli. I mean, those foods, even people without digestive health issues get gas from those foods.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're just not massively digestible. So definitely chopping those out. Carrots, apples, bananas, highly starchy, highly fibrous. Normally a good idea to eat those foods. But again, when we're talking about a clinical condition, like digestive health, IBS, etc., then, we need to make these changes.
Yeah.
So green leafy vegetables, fine.
Yeah.
Just anything, like I said, that's relatively low in starch, low in fiber, only going to be fine.
Yeah. So what would you do after those 5 days? Let's say someone does it, their symptoms kind of clear up and they feel normal, although obviously there's another issue of defining what normal is, because if someone's used to going to the loo multiple times, now they're going twice, they might say they're constipated. So there's that as well, because that comes up a lot. Like, I'm not going enough now, but it's just less than their normal. But off that topic, like, what would you do if someone then said, right, I've done that, I'm in control now? Would they have to do that forever? Like, how would you go about rebuilding it from there, if you like?
Yeah, good question. So they definitely wouldn't have to do that forever.
Yeah.
Although, like you said, that gives them back some control. Like, one of the biggest issues that I've come across in patients with these types of conditions is, they get massively stressed and anxious because they don't know what's happening. They try to eat healthy and their symptoms get worse. They eat unhealthy, their symptoms get worse. They don't eat, they don't feel any better. So they're just confused, which leads to a bit of anxiety, etc.
Yeah.
And so just having that piece of control can be massive for somebody. But then after that, like I said, there are certain types of starches that people can eat that aren't highly fermentable. And so it's not like you have to be on a low carb or ketogenic diet for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
You can eat carbs. It's just certain types of carbs. And the reason for that is, if we were to take different carb sources, like different types of potatoes, different types of bread, different types of rice, and look at them under the microscope, the molecular structure of the starches is different.
Yeah.
Now, that might not sound interesting, but the impact of that is, because of the molecular structure, they get digested in different parts of the intestines. So, for example, like brown rice, massively fermentable, whereas jasmine rice, or Thai jasmine rice as it's sometimes called, isn't massively fermentable. So, somebody could eat Thai jasmine rice and have no symptoms at all. Whereas they could eat even just normal white rice and it's less fermentable than brown rice, but still fermentable.
Yeah.
So they might get some symptoms, might be mild, that might be tolerable or not. But then with the jasmine rice, they just won't get any symptoms. And so after those 5 days, I would kind of start that ball rolling of introducing, you could call them safe starches if you like. That sounds a bit gimmicky, but it's kind of like
the safe starch.
Yeah, kind of like, I guess everybody knows what that means. But that's kind of where I would go next.
Yeah.
So for example, like your normal King Edward potato, even though it's white, would be massively fermentable because of the molecular structure of the starch.
Yeah.
Whereas there's a breed of white potato that has a red skin. I forget what it's called. And because of the molecular structure of the starch, it isn't highly fermentable, which just means that the bacteria don't eat as much of it and therefore don't produce as much gas and therefore you don't get as many symptoms.
Okay.
And so it's just about making these swaps, really. And you can, if you plan ahead, you can eat all of the same normal stuff that you otherwise would. You just have to swap out the sources of carbohydrates.
Yeah.
Sadly, there's no replacement for bananas and apples. But if you've got the rest of your day's intake in check, you might be able to eat half a banana and be okay.
Yeah, I was about to say that. Is there because someone actually said one of the questions is, I can eat bread. So Michelle asked, I can eat bread one day, and I'm fine. Then the next day I'll have a slice of bread, I'm fine. Next day I have a slice of bread, and I'm like, oh, why am I bloated? And I mean, as I said, and as we discussed before, it can be what you're having it with. If you're having like bread with, like on the side of a 3-course meal one day, it might just be the volume of food, which it can be sometimes. But is there an accumulative effect of it? Like,
yeah, there definitely is. So, like the metaphor or analogy I used on the previous call, if you remember, was like blowing up a balloon, right?
Yeah.
So if you just get like an empty birthday balloon and you put one puff of air into it, right? It blows up a little bit.
Yeah.
But not much. And then you do the same the next day, and then the next day, and then the next day. And literally for like maybe 15 days, it's fine. But then on day 16 or whenever that is, it's going to eventually burst.
Yeah.
And it is the same with your GI tract and the fermentation that we're talking about. So, the bacteria will produce as much gas in proportion to the fermentable foodstuffs that you eat. And so if you eat, one piece of bread today, it's only a little bit of gas. You might feel a little bit of heaviness in your stomach, but nothing much. But you might think, that was okay. Next day, have 2 slices of bread. You might feel okay. So maybe you've not noticed the increase in gas, and it does. Yeah, it can take a while. Whereas obviously somebody that notices the symptoms a lot faster would be somebody that, say, for example, they might have Weetabix for breakfast. They might have a bagel for lunch. They might have a chocolate bar for a snack. And then they might have some pasta for dinner. So you can just see it's just like every meal is like fermentable. So surprise, surprise, you end the day with like a turtle belly or, whatever your symptoms are. So like there is a threshold. It's different for everybody, and that's, again, kind of like the whole 5-day challenge thing is, at least clinically for me, I found it useful, just because you can get people to a baseline really fast and then introduce things starting off with the supposed safe starches. And then, like everything else is just an experiment, right? Because like I said, somebody might be able to have half a banana every day and be okay. And that's fine. And then other people won't be able to have any at all. And it will.
And like you said, it's just very, in terms of a stress point of view and worrying about will I be okay today, I guess it's good to have a go-to that 5 days, right?
Yeah, 100% psychologically, yeah. And we see that in the research for every other clinical condition as well. So people with celiac disease, when we look at the research, like obviously not in every single person, but on average, they tend to end up, with some psychological issues like depression and anxiety and stuff, because sometimes they feel out of control. And, we see that with a lot of different clinical issues. So yeah, like being able to give somebody back that sense of control is massive, because it becomes a choice, right? Like if you take what we've talked about on this call, so you know how to manage your symptoms,
Yeah.
and then your friend rings you up on a Friday night and says, "Do you want to go for pizza and beer?" Okay, like what's going to happen.
Yeah.
It won't happen immediately. It probably won't even happen 2 hours later. It'll be more like 6 hours, 8 hours later, maybe even the next day that you'll pay for it in terms of symptoms. But at least you know and you have a choice. And so, you could choose to not do that, or you could choose to go out with your friend, eat those things, enjoy it, and then immediately the next day, go back to your baseline and, get back to your baseline as fast as possible, probably by Monday or something.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
So yeah, that's huge, really.
So within that, these are merging two questions. So someone asked, simple things we can do to improve our gut health and digestion. So this is referring to like potentially problems with like digesting beans and legumes that we know, we just discussed, will be fermentable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Without spending pounds on, I love their, this is, I quote, tweedleberries and faddy berries and whatever else is the latest craze for clogging up our kitchen cupboards. And another one was winter or summer savoury for beans. She's heard that written to help with digestion of beans. Like, is there anything that actually has some research on that you know of that may help?
In terms of what? Helping digestion?
Like digestion, like to reduce fermentation or pre-digest foods. 'Cause I know, like, obviously some people will soak the beans, say, to help with that. Like, but is there anything you can help with it? Yeah.
Yeah, so that kind of thing is like, like traditional preparation methods, right? Like soaking beans overnight or soaking oats overnight, and that's like quite traditional ways of preparing food so they are more edible, if you like. That said, even if you've got IBS or some other digestive health issues that relates to what we're talking about, even if you pre-soak your beans, you're still eating a bunch of fiber.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Even if you take supplemental digestive enzymes, you are still eating a bunch of fiber. And what that means is at least a good portion of that fiber will make it to your large intestines and get eaten by that bacteria, regardless of the digestive enzymes or preparation method.
Yeah.
And that bacteria will produce gas. Now, again, in a normal person, that is normal and they won't have any symptoms. But in somebody with a digestive health condition, they will get symptoms to some degree. And so, I know you messaged me on WhatsApp before about some herbs to help with digestion. And honestly, like, it's all a waste of time because like, yes, some of it can help, but it's all, in my opinion, like a massive effort and will provide you with, like, say, a 3% benefit.
Yeah.
You'll still get issues. Whereas the stuff that I'm talking about, none of this is my opinion, really. This is all, from the research, from people way smarter than myself, microbiologists, etc. And it's the simplest thing to do.
Yeah.
Like the 5-day challenge is like, I don't know, in my opinion, it's one change to make. And the benefit is massive. The downside is like almost nil. So
Yeah.
so that would be my opinion on that, really.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. That's pretty much in line with where I'd be on that. But interstitial cystitis, bladder and bladder pain. So
Mm-hmm.
IC. Did you have much of that in your clinic?
Not particularly, to be honest.
Okay, yeah, I've done some research on it, and like they don't really know too much. There's not really much out there on it, but I don't know if you have any. It's kind of like, yeah, like IC is what it's called, interstitial cystitis.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, so if somebody was asking me about that now, I would say, like, one, how do you know that pain's coming from your bladder? And two, that could just be an infection of some description. Go to your GP. No amount of special herbs or ketogenic berries or whatever is gonna.
Yeah.
I mean,
So this person in particular is regularly seeing someone, and it just comes on, and they quite often can't put two and two together. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, to be honest, there are some diseases that relate to the digestive tract, such as Crohn's disease.
Yeah.
That does happen. You could have the perfect diet, lead the perfect lifestyle, and it will just flare up, and you can just be hospitalized for 5 days.
Yeah.
For no apparent reason. And obviously there is a reason, but it's just such a complex thing to dissect. Like the triggers are, like your digestive tract, the gut microbiome is influenced by the environment. It's influenced by how much sleep you get. It's influenced by how stressed you are. It's influenced by what you eat or didn't eat. It's influenced by all of these things.
Yeah, and I think it's important to bring that up. Yeah.
So yeah, there are just going to be some conditions that, yes, you can improve them, like Crohn's. Like you can reduce the amount of flare-ups in Crohn's disease by adjusting your nutrition, but that doesn't mean you'll never have any flare-ups.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's just my experience.
Yeah, no, I think so. Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's important to bring up like lifestyle stress and even exercise, right? Like how that can affect everything going forward as well, because we often want like the Tweedleberries and Faddy berries, but yeah, like simple things like you look at like meditation and stuff like that on IBS. There's some decent stuff on there that I've seen, which is interesting. But yeah, so and Rachel also asked, like, should we be self-testing our gut bacteria? Are there any good ones to do out there? Would you even recommend it? Yeah.
Short answer, no, don't bother. Save your money, spend it on ice cream. Long answer is, like the testing is complicated. Like the reason all of this has only become like such a talking point over the last maybe 5 to 10 years is because the technology has only now gotten to the point where the researchers can start testing these things.
Yeah.
And obviously that's going to continue to improve moving forward. But I haven't yet seen any reliable, commercially available testing equipment that can, give you an accurate picture of your gut microbiome or anything else, really.
Yeah.
Like, and bearing in mind, like I said, like even if it could, your gut microbiome changes every day.
Yeah.
Like the composition of it changes every day. You've got multiple strains of bacteria, all doing different things, and you need most of them. And it just changes every day in response to the environment, to the stress, to the food, etc. So even if you could have something that was 100% accurate, cheap and affordable that you could do today, that only gives you a snapshot of today, right? It's a bit like in diabetes, if somebody tests their blood sugar.
Yeah.
right? Like I could test my blood sugar right now and it might say 5 millimoles. I test it in 2 hours and it might say 7. Right? It only gives you a snapshot in time, and that would be the same in, if there was any reliable, commercially available tests for this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
To my knowledge, there aren't. There was a device that came out last year that I bought, cost several £100, and it's supposed to replicate research level testing, but kind of like connecting to your phone and stuff. I bought it, didn't really work that well, to be honest. So to my knowledge, there aren't anything on the high street that tells you, they can give you like an intolerance test and all of this kind of stuff. Like,
I've seen them. Yeah.
Honestly, it's just nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Like, if that was actually real, like the NHS wouldn't need to employ like consultants that are experts in allergies or gastroenterologists and like that kind of stuff. We would just send everybody to Holland and Barrett, figure out the problem, and then buy some keto berries or something.
Yeah, no, I get that. And because there's like these app that, there's some stuff like an app that says, it will tell you, the exact food you need. But like you said, your gut bacteria is changing daily. And, even the interesting thing is that the practical advice that they'll give you anyway, whether it's right or wrong, is usually pretty much just eat like almost what you already know. Like
in the digestive health circles, 100%. I'll put my salary on this. Any diet advice that you're going to get that's going to be effective is going to revolve around either low FODMAP, low fermentation, which I've just talked about, and they're both the same thing. They just achieve the same result via different mechanisms. Or if you happen to do a ketogenic diet, you automatically cut out all the fermentable stuff like we've already talked about. And so regardless of how they sell you those diets or that piece of advice, they could get you to do like a magic questionnaire that will reveal the 3 secrets to your whatever, right? Like horoscope type stuff. Ultimately, you end up with the same advice. It's a bit like weight loss, right? And I've seen a lot of this recently in my Facebook feed, where there's a few companies that are like, take this questionnaire to find out what the perfect diet is for your body type.
Oh, I've seen that,
Yeah, right? And I think they're actually called body type or something.
Yeah, they give you a metabolic ID or something like that,
Something like that, and you do their questionnaire and then it tells you you've got this specific metabolic type, and then they give you this specific diet that's going to make you lose weight, and, a lot of people think it's magical and oh my God. And like the reality is like the diet they give you has less calories and more protein. That's it.
So one of the ladies who I work with did it and said, Matt, what do you think of this? And I looked at it, it says, you never have to worry about calories again. And then the diet they gave them says you need to eat 50% protein, 30% fat and 20% carbs. And I went, how are you going to know if you're eating 50% protein if you have no idea how many calories you're eating? The percentage works off the calories. But like you said, all they've done is said eat more protein, which means you'll be full up. You might, and then if you do have IBS symptoms, you're then eating a lower fermentation diet automatically because it's 20% carbs, which is low. No, I get it.
So it's just important for people to know that stuff like that is marketing. Like, and I'm, like we've talked about before, you know me by now, so like I'm as much of a student of marketing in the last few years as I am of, nutrition and dietetics and stuff. I find it fascinating because it's all like psychology. It's just interesting to me how, for example, the weight loss industry can promote stuff that isn't sustainable, promote stuff that people ultimately fail with, but every 12 months convince people that this time it's going to work. Right? And that's just pure psychology, and it's just really fascinating to me how they do it. So stuff like what we're talking about, it's just marketing for the most part. There are obviously going to be products and services that come out that are legit. In my experience, you'll tend to find that like the most legitimate products or services in any field tend to use the least hypey marketing.
Yeah, yeah.
And maybe because of
Yeah,
that they get less customers or whatever. But that's just an
I saw a
observation.
supplement company making some wild claims actually before.
Yeah, like normally when there's a wild claim involved, it's normally just marketers
Or a
pushing the boundary.
celebrity.
Yeah, right. Like they've got a celebrity, or they've got like one rat study.
Yeah, yeah.
That shows like 27% increase in testosterone. And it's like, right, if I'm a rat, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But what their ad says is take our keto berries and you have a 27% increase in testosterone.
Yeah.
And it's like legally they're allowed to do that, but when you look at the details, it's like, oh my, seriously?
Yeah. Like,
yeah. So
like garlic supplements or something like that as well.
Yeah.
You do a study in rats, it transfers over to, like 27 garlic cloves an hour.
Yeah, exactly, right. And like, you talk to any, like I've interviewed loads of researchers, and you talk to any of them, and they'll tell you like the biology of a rat is nowhere near similar to that of a human. They do these studies in rats and mice because it's cheap, it's fast, like.
And it saves time, I guess, right?
People
Before they want to do it
on rats.
Yeah.
Like if these researchers were testing on kittens, right? Like people would have a problem with that. But like the biology isn't remotely similar, so it doesn't transfer, sadly. Whereas I don't know. Like I guess if somebody gave like some berry formula to a chimp and it made him ripped, got rid of all of his IBS in one day, maybe you could reasonably say, well, we might expect the same in humans, but as good scientists and clinicians, we still need to see the research in humans to verify that.
Yeah, I guess it's sometimes used as preliminary data, isn't it? I guess so. If we see something in rat, maybe we'll then do it in humans before saying anything. But I guess the problem is the Daily Mail gets hold of, like a rat study before it's even they talk about it in humans or even think about doing anything with humans. But
exactly.
Yeah. So on the topic of like, before that we were touching on, you mentioned like seeing specialists and stuff, consultant. Someone, Rachel says, another Rachel says, I have a number of food allergies, intolerances. My mouth goes itchy, my lips swell, and I get like blotchy skin. What's the difference between a true allergy and an intolerance? What's happening to the body? And is avoidance / antihistamines the only way to deal with it?
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, this one's relatively complex.
Yeah.
So, an intolerance, like in my opinion, like loads of people consider themselves to have an intolerance, right? So, they eat some broccoli and they get bloated. They might think, like I'm intolerant to that, or lactose intolerance tends to present similarly.
Yeah.
But the symptoms she's getting sounds like a true allergic reaction.
Yeah.
It actually sounds like urticaria. I think that's how you say it. I could be wrong, but it sounds like something like that, which is a true allergy. Like I had one patient in my clinic just one time, and she was allergic to fruit.
Okay.
And how we got around that, interestingly, just through experimentation, was we figured out if she cooked the fruit, she could eat it.
Okay.
So never really figured out why that was the case. Yeah. So what's going on really, like in an allergy, again, like, this is a completely different subject, right? And this is completely not my field of expertise at all. But in an allergy kind of situation, obviously your body is just having an immune response to the food that you're eating. So your immune system, which is essentially just a massive network of cells and nerves all over your body, and when you eat certain things or you come into contact with certain things, your immune system perceives those things to be a threat.
Yeah.
And again, in a normal functioning immune system, your body produces white blood cells, etc., and it deals with the infection, and nobody ever really notices unless you get the flu or something. But when you've got an allergy like that, like your immune system overreacts, right? So it's like this overreaction, which is where, you know, the symptoms come from, and it can be life or death for people.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, like if you eat a food and you get a bit bloated, or, you know, your poos are a little bit loose for a couple of hours, you know, you don't have an allergy. If you eat a food and your throat gets constricted and you can't breathe, or your face swells up, or, you know, you've got red itchy blotches all over your body, like, you know, chances are you've got an allergy. You need to see a specialist. You know, preferably not one from Holland and Barrett. Go and see an actual professional.
Yeah.
There will be some food related stuff you can do. There'll be some lifestyle related stuff you can do, like we talked about. There will be some medication stuff you can do. You know, there are more medications than just antihistamines. I can't tell you the names of any because that's not my area, but yeah, like if those are the symptoms you've got, see a specialist, and go from there. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So another question I got was, will I gain weight if I'm less bloated? So, because I did it basically to give a bit of background, I explained a bit about like you'll be reducing fermentation. So you could step on the scales and actually lose weight. And I'm talking about body fat here, because obviously mindset around stepping on the scales and them going up, but it just being maybe due to bloating, you know, maybe due to the volume of food in your stomach. But they asked, well, if I then don't have as many, like, I guess, IBS bouts, will I gain weight? And should I expect to gain some weight with that? I guess this is from a mindset point of view with relationship with the scales, which I always talk about, you know, like fluctuations in the scales are going to happen. But yeah, so I guess as well, like to bolt onto the question about will you extract more calories from food because of that?
Yeah, good question. So the short answer is no. I think there's two separate issues in your question. So the first one being the psychology around the number on the scale.
Yeah.
So IBS or not, as you know, Matt, like the number on the scale can go up or down depending on a number of factors. Right? Like, yes, it can be related to body fat. It can be related to muscle loss, muscle gain, how much water you drink, like you said, the volume of food that you eat, whether or not you had a poo that day, you know, how much you sweated that day, like all of these things, right? Which is why just weighing yourself once is just, you know, like it doesn't really tell you a great deal. You know, it's just a very crude measure. And then, so like that will happen regardless of IBS symptoms, right?
Yeah.
But then in reality, like if you're eating in a way that helps you control your IBS symptoms, in reality, you should be losing weight. And the reason for that is because if you do what we talked about today, so you've cut out a bunch of starchy stuff, you've cut out a bunch of fibrous stuff, what does all of that stuff have? Calories.
Yeah.
So we know from decades of research, if you just cut out some calories, you're going to lose some weight.
Yeah.
Now, of course, in the short term, you know, you might cut out a bunch of calories, your IBS gets better. You're also training at Fruci Fitness.
Yeah.
You've built a little bit of muscle. Matt's getting you to drink 4 liters of water or whatever he's doing, right?
Yeah.
So maybe the scale in that first 5 days didn't actually change that much. And that's going to play with your psychology because you're going to think, hang on, you mean like maybe I gained weight or whatever the case is, or maybe you were constipated for 5 days and you gained a pound. But that doesn't reflect reality. This is why, like, you know, like this is why weight loss can mess, like you said, it can mess with people's heads sometimes, and why having support from a coach that knows what they're doing, such as yourself, not just a personal trainer, like you're actually a nutritionist as well, like you understand all of this. But all of that stuff will just happen anyway. And what I normally tell to people on that side of things is like whether, because I think people typically will say like stick to the diet for 5 days, 10 days. Maybe they didn't lose weight or they gained a pound, so they feel like it's not working still, come off their supposed diet, right?
Yeah.
And just binge and eat whatever they want. And I always tell those people that, like, look, whether the scales change or not, you are not going to get the body that you want by just having a free-for-all every single day.
Yeah.
Right? Regardless, it's just not possible. Like, if it was possible, like, people like you or I wouldn't have jobs. Yeah. There'd be no need for it. You just eat whatever you want and get lean. Boom, sweet, done. I wish that was the case. And if I figure it out, trust me, I'll be a billionaire. But, so I always remind people of that. And what that comes back down to is helping people to fall in love with the process and not so much of the outcome.
Yeah.
Outcomes exist to give us a general direction. Like I want to retire with 100 grand in the bank, or I want to weigh 2 stone less for this wedding, right? Like, that just gives you a general direction, though.
Yeah.
Like, really, we need to just fall in love with the process, which in terms of what we're talking about is like eating the right things in the right amounts, maybe even at the right time, exercising daily, meditating. That's the process.
Yeah.
And once you've identified the process that will get you to your outcome, if you just forget about the outcome and learn to love the process, which is why, Matt, I think you use it in your business, like the 3F process.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
Like as simple as that seems, like that just helps to gamify the process, the day in, day out activities of, what you need to do to get to the outcome. So
yeah, it's right. It's like, so we also do the 3S, so the food, fitness, focus element. So you're ticking off your habits daily, putting your attention on what you're doing each day rather than thinking like, just going for about your week and then hoping, fingers crossed almost, that something's going to happen. Whereas you clearly see what's worked. And on top of that, I'm always doing little incentives to, attend sessions with me, do the home workouts that we do. We have like live yoga, live workouts that you can follow along at home. Doing like online challenges where you'll get like basically a raffle ticket for each one that you do. So essentially I can see what they do. They tell me when they've done it. They'll get a raffle ticket and then there'll be prizes at the end, be it like, like Waitrose vouchers, hoodies, t-shirts, stuff like that, just to make it like incentives, but also gamified and also then clearly seeing what I did do, what I didn't do. So you can just have a look at what worked and what didn't. Otherwise it's just that cycle of almost relying on how you feel that day to judge on your next action, right? So if you wake up one day and, you're just not feeling great, you get some bad news and then you step on the scale, you've got no rationale behind your next decision almost. It's just impulse, right?
Exactly, yeah. You're 100% right. And that's why like planning in advance is key. Because exactly like what you just said, when we look at the psychology of all of this, like we all make decisions emotionally first and we justify with logic.
Yeah.
The crazy thing is marketers figured that out in the 1950s.
Yeah.
As clinicians and behavioral scientists and people that are trying to help people improve their lives, we've only really kind of acknowledged that in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
But it is exactly what you're just saying. Like if somebody wakes up first thing in the morning, like think about this, right? Like this actually proves the point. Most people, they wake up first thing in the morning, they feel like a zombie.
Yeah.
What's the first thing they do? Grab a coffee.
Yeah.
Why is that? Because it makes them feel like less of a zombie.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and that's like that just proves the point. So yeah, like having your process mapped out in advance.
Yeah.
And working that process just reduces how much you rely on all of that, really. So
yeah.
Anyway, off topic. But.
Yeah. No. good, like relevant to the whole process really. But a few more questions just to. One person asked about vegetables, plants. They've heard about lectins, like and anti-nutrients, polyphenols. Should they be worried about anti-nutrients in plants if they, especially if this comes from an angle of if I do eat less meat or if I do make swaps, should I be worried about anti-nutrients in plants and
Hmm.
lectins?
Good question. So there are anti-nutrients in different foodstuffs,
Mm.
normally in plants.
Yeah.
They do exist. They will absorb, different vitamins, minerals, etc. Do you need to worry about them? In my opinion, no. Why? Because, for example, like in the paleo community a while back, there was a whole thing about, not eating too much spinach or something or kale because of the goitrins in there, which is an anti-nutrient. But like the reality is, like the amount of spinach or kale you need to eat to absorb enough anti-nutrients to make it clinically significant is a huge amount.
Yeah.
And bearing in mind that like 99% of the UK population don't eat enough fruit or vegetables anyway.
Yeah.
And that includes people like you or me.
Yeah.
Like, should you be worrying about anti-nutrients? No. That's like saying you're gonna save for your pension by, not buying yourself, I don't know, like a 10-pence bar of chocolate every day. Like it's just not going to make any difference, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just like such a tiny small thing that has such a tiny small impact. And even if it had a big impact, like I said, people naturally don't eat that much in terms of vegetables. And it is vegetables that, plant-based foods that typically have the most anti-nutrients, interestingly.
Yeah, it is interesting. Yeah.
Interesting in the sense, though, of like, at the moment, people like to run around talking about vegan and vegetarianism like it's the answer to everything.
Yeah.
And it's really not. Like there are some downsides, like we talked about before we hit record, but
yeah,
that's another discussion for another day, I think.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, yeah, and on that topic, I guess like there was a few like a paper about zinc deficiency, and obviously, like you said, zinc can help with gut health, but only if you're deficient, right? And you should get, if you have a balanced diet, then you should have enough zinc, right?
Yeah, so if I remember correctly, about a week ago you sent me that link to that paper in WhatsApp.
Yeah.
And it's something to do with they supplemented people with digestive health issues with zinc, their gut barrier function improved. And like I messaged you back, like that doesn't necessarily mean people should supplement with zinc. Because we know that other things can influence your gut barrier function, right? And your gut barrier is like, like the first part of your GI tract where your body's trying to absorb nutrients.
Yeah.
And we know different things can influence that, right? So foods that contain gluten can influence that. Even in people without celiac disease, like we know that from research. Stress can influence that. We know that from research. Caffeine can influence that. We know that from research. Alcohol can influence that. We know that from research. So, like, should people run out and supplement just with zinc? In my opinion, no. Like, probably never. Again, just because it's going to be one of, like it was in that paper, like it's going to be one of those things that's like, it's a large amount of effort for a small amount of benefit that you probably won't even notice. You'll get probably bigger benefit and it'll be easier if you just take a broad spectrum multivitamin each day.
Yeah.
Like if you're worried about being nutrient deficient or, maybe your diet's really limited for some reason, like you do the 5-day challenge and you're really stressed about, oh my God, I'm not really eating anything nutritious. Take a broad spectrum multivitamin, you'll get, most of what you need. And you don't need to worry about it or stress about it.
Yeah. Cool. So, probiotics, is there any value in taking them to maintain gut bacteria balance? Like, Is there any brands you recommend? Are they just placebo? Do they actually do anything? How do you know which product is best? Will they help IBS? Yeah.
Yeah, this is an interesting one because the answer is both yes and no.
Yeah.
So probiotic supplements, like the idea is that there are certain strains of bacteria that have positive effects on your body, and certain companies have been able to put those into a supplement. And the idea is that you take those and then you have more of those bacteria in your GI tract. The bad news is the cheaper the supplement you buy, the less likely it is to make it to the part of the body that it needs to make it to, which is the large intestine.
Yeah.
Because it's got to go through, like, you got to swallow it, it's got to go through your stomach, all of that acid, then the small intestine, and it's just, all of that bacteria is just going to get destroyed.
Yeah.
Absolutely destroyed. Now, that said, there are a couple of companies that I don't remember the names of, but I can look them up after the call.
I know one company, Simprove.
Simprove is one. Yeah. Simprove is actually one of the dietitians that work for Simprove.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Simprove is one. There is another one that is cheaper, because I know Simprove is crazy expensive.
Yeah.
It's like 80 quid a month or something silly.
Yeah.
There is another one that is, and the other one that I'm thinking of, that is actually recommended by some gastroenterologists, and it's like 25 quid a month, so it's still not cheap.
Yeah.
But they've recognized this problem of like the bacteria making it to the large intestine where it needs to go, and they've developed an encapsulation method that helps the bacteria to get where it needs to go. So in those cases, there was a lot of research that certain types of bacteria delivered via probiotic supplements can have pretty clinical significant effects in terms of reducing IBS symptoms, etc. For all the reasons we're talking about. Lots of research on it. But there is that thing of, it's a bit like multivitamins are the same. If you buy just a cheap supermarket multivitamin, it costs you 60 pence, right? Like, the ingredients are obviously not high quality. In scientific terms, we would say they are not really bioavailable, so you might as well have not bothered. Whereas if you buy a multivitamin and it costs you a tenner, then I'm not saying it's always going to be high quality, but it's a tenner for a reason, right? Either they're ripping you off or they've made a good product.
Yeah.
Right? And by good product, that means the ingredients they've used are highly bioavailable, so your body can actually absorb some or all of it.
Yeah.
And it's the same with probiotics. So when you go to the store and you pay a £5 for 60 probiotics or something, I would be dubious, because chances are that bacteria is not going to make it to where it needs to go.
Yeah.
Whereas something like Simprove would.
Yeah, 'cause I've seen there was one study where they actually took like Simprove, Yakult, Actimel, and a few other brands, and they simulated, if you like, the human digestive tract, and looked at the billions or millions of bacteria at the start, then how many got to the end, and you just saw some had like double the amount of like Simprove, say, but they all didn't even get to the place where they need to go, kind of thing. There's still some, obviously, some got there, but it's quite interesting. But so, what about like the yogurts, like your Actimels? Are they worth taking? Will they do any harm? I guess no, but what's your views on them?
The short answer is waste of time. Long answer is the research I've seen on these drinks is to get any probiotic effect at all, and I'm not even talking clinically significant, but to get any probiotic effect at all, you would need to drink, say, 6 Yakult drinks every day or 6 Activia drinks every day.
Yeah.
Now, bearing in mind they sell them in packs of 4 for about £3.50, that becomes a very expensive habit.
Yeah.
Right? It actually would be cheaper to spend 30 quid on a decent probiotic.
Yeah.
That actually would be more affordable in comparison. So does that mean eating yogurt is not worth it? No, that's not what I'm saying at all. but drinking those little yogurt drinks with the view of they're going to improve your digestive health because of the probiotics, that's not true. That's like demonstratively, scientifically not true. And then people might say, well, okay, Mike, if you're right, then why are these companies selling these things? Well, because people buy them.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same as like, why do people sell alcohol when everybody knows alcohol is bad for you?
Yeah.
Well, why? Because people buy it.
Yeah.
So,
No, that makes sense. And I guess on that as well, fermented foods, there's obviously a big thing about that at the moment. Now, I've looked at some stuff on it, and it still seems like fermented dairy is superior to anything else. You know, there's like fermented grains and stuff like that now. Any views on fermented foods, like I guess for gut health, but yeah.
Yeah, so again, it's not an area that I've looked deeply into, but my opinion is fermented foods like fermented vegetables, fermented dairy, like kefir. There's one beginning with L that I can't quite remember.
Yeah.
Like these things are normally like good, advantageous for you. Like, and by fermented, it just means that they've been left to culture for longer.
Yeah.
So they have more bacteria than normal in these products, which is why they typically taste a bit sour. So they don't taste amazing.
Yeah.
And if you like, for example, if you buy a fermented yogurt drink that does taste amazing, you know it's not fermented. So because they normally taste a bit sour. So yeah, like those are going to be probably better for you than the typical commercial yogurt drinks.
Yeah. Okay.
But is it still worth, like, if you don't enjoy those foods, is it worth forcing yourself to consume them in the hopes that it will improve your digestive health? Like, I would suggest there's easier things you could do, and more enjoyable things you could do, than forcing yourself to drink some soured milk, just because some guru on the internet said it was a good idea. Like, if you like those products, like, amazing. Like, more power to you. Eat more of them. Definitely good for you. I've not met anybody that actually likes them yet, but I know a lot of people are buying them. So, yeah, that's my opinion. What's your opinion, Matt?
I mean, I don't mind kefir. But it's like you said, it's quite expensive, so I wouldn't just get it as a drink that often. But I mean, it's okay. But for me, I just stick to like Greek yogurt, basically. Not even for reasons really for gut health at all. Actually, just because I like it. It's filling and good source of protein.
And it's cheap, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's actually quite enjoyable, like Greek yogurt and some fruit. Boom, done.
Yeah, exactly. Greek yogurt, berries. You've got protein, vitamin, nutrition in there, and it's I could probably get berries and Greek yogurt for the same price as one kefir or kefir. So one question was, why do I feel nauseous when I add protein powder to smoothies?
Probably because of everything else that this person's adding.
Yeah.
We've already talked about protein isn't fermentable. That can differ. So if she's using a protein powder, if she's using a very cheap protein powder, there's a good chance it will have more starch and sugar than it will protein. So that will be something to check. Like, is it actually just pure protein?
It is just whey. It's what I know. The one it's whey protein. Yeah, just like it's not a, and it's not a because I know obviously you can get like a vegan one which might be more fibrous or etc. and pea protein etc. hemp, but this is whey.
Yeah. So in that case, then it's going to be whatever she's adding to it.
So it'll be with milk. Yeah.
Yeah. So for her, like swapping to lactose-free milk. That will make a massive difference because, lactose is a fermentable form of carbohydrate. Yeah. So lactose-free milk all that company has done. People think it's like a weird type of milk. It's the same milk. They just put the enzymes in the milk so that your body doesn't have to digest it. By the time you drink it, like most of the lactose has been digested by the enzymes.
Yeah.
So swapping to lactose-free milk can help. Obviously, taking the milk out entirely will make a big difference. The fastest way for that person to know is just to mix the protein powder with water, drink that, see what happens. Again, I'm 99% certain that nothing will happen at all. They just won't feel hungry for a couple of hours.
Yeah.
So it'll be whatever else is being added, you know. Cool. So popular shake recipes, like you said, milk, yogurt, avocados, bananas, apples, like all of this stuff has fermentable carbohydrates or fiber. So, you know, she just sounds like she needs to find recipes that minimize those things.
And almost,
you know,
maybe start off with like whey and water and just see if anything happens.
Yeah, I would just for no other reason other than that will prove it to her.
Yeah.
You know, because like, as you know, Matt, as a nutritionist, like, you know, we've both been in the industry for a long time. It's like, you can give out all the advice that you want, but until people experience it for themselves, they don't really take it on board. So for this person, if she drinks the whey just mixed with water and then doesn't get any bloating, okay, cool. Now she's listening. Right? And that's really the only reason, right? It's just to get that buy-in. That'll prove it to her.
And then maybe you can add stuff in after that. So maybe go, right, add some berries.
Yeah, exactly. And then, so I would go like, add some blueberries.
Yeah.
Right? Or add some strawberries. Why? Because there's low sugar, low fiber.
Yeah.
So you shouldn't be getting any symptoms from those foods.
Yeah.
You know, and then by the time you've got there, you could go, okay, let's add some almond milk. You're not going to get any issues from that. And then you might go, okay, let's add a banana. You add the banana and boom, turtle belly.
Yeah.
You know, or bloating or whatever the symptoms are. And then you know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, cool. That makes sense. So I think that's pretty much all the questions. Yeah. There's one here on collagen. About, you know, we I think your answer is going to be very similar to the other supplements, and it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I think. Look, I think like the thing I would leave all the listeners with, which is, you know, in line with what your program does, Matt, is like, you know, like whatever area of our life we want to improve, it's quite natural to look for some kind of shortcut or some kind of trick or hack, or, you know, I'll just take this supplement, do this one weird exercise, you know, that kind of stuff. But the reality is 99% of the time, the thing that's going to get you to your goal the fastest is to do the things that you don't actually want to do.
Yeah.
You know, and when we're talking about weight loss, that's going to be like changing your lifestyle, right? So you talked about food-focused fitness, right? So it's like meditate every day.
Yeah.
Right? Don't eat too much, like every day. And yeah, I know these things can be complicated, but, you know, like, don't work 70 hours a week. Don't stay up, you know, staring at your phone until half midnight, knowing that the kids are going to be up at 5:30.
Yeah.
Right? Just like simple lifestyle things that we all do these things, and they make our lives harder.
Because they should be called gut health hacks, right?
You could legitimately do that. Yeah, you could.
5 gut health hacks. Don't stay on your phone till half midnight. Drink water. Exercise daily. Yeah.
They could also be like 5. The exact same hacks could be 5 weight loss hacks, or 5 depression hacks, 5 anxiety hacks. Because if you do the things I've just said, you'll be a bit more depressed, a bit more anxious, a bit more grumpy. You'll eat more. You'll probably gain some weight. Like, your digestive health will not be brilliant. So yeah, you could do that, but
sorry, I've got these comments here. The flaxseed and cyanide thing. I don't know if you saw that. The European Food Safety Authority came out and they warned against like cyanide poisoning in flaxseeds, crushed flaxseed. And a few people have asked about that, and you know, there's not really been like a dose that they've really mentioned.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah, I've not seen that. Like, it sounds like a public health warning or something. But I've not seen that wherever that's come from. But if that's only just appeared now,
like 2 days ago.
Okay,
because
that's only just appeared now. It sounds like a contamination issue.
Yeah.
Because, as you know, crushed flaxseed has been on the market for forever.
Yeah, so one of the brands came out with a statement and said, we've been selling crushed flaxseed for 15 years and never had anyone, come back. So, I don't know. Yeah,
so, I mean, it sounds like a contamination issue, which, like maybe that's something to do with the production of a certain company or whatever, which sometimes happens, depending how products are produced. Like, I'm not sure if this is a good example, but decaf coffee, how they get most of the caffeine out is using solvents. So, obviously solvents being things like glue and stuff, like, obviously if that production process went even slightly wrong, you'd be drinking quite a lot of solvents, which would punch holes in your stomach pretty fast.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I've not looked into it, but like you said, flaxseed has been around forever. We've never seen any research on it. Never heard anything about cyanide poisoning. There's never been any cases that I've heard of people being hospitalized because they've eaten too much flaxseed.
No.
So again, I wouldn't stress about it. But.
Cool. I think that's pretty much everything there, and I think, like, to sum up, really, because I know IBS was the biggest topic around it. I guess 5-day challenge. See how someone goes with that, and then start to kind of maybe reintroduce, if you like we said.
Yeah, like I said, specific types of starches. But like you said, start with a 5-day challenge, and I would go so far as to say, I know you just said, see how they go with that.
Yeah.
Because I've seen this work so many thousands of times in my clinics.
Yeah.
I would go so far as to say, if you do that 5-day challenge, that will work.
Okay.
100%. And then it's just a case of knowing what the, for lack of a better term, what the safe starches are, which, like Matt, I've recommended a book to you that lists all of them, so you can relay that info to your clients. And if you need follow-up questions, then feel free to forward them on. And then it's just a case. But like I said, because I've seen it work so many, literally thousands of times. I even did a piece of research in the NHS for the NHS before I left, just to have some official data of of this actually working, because it works just as well, if not better, than FODMAP, and it's a lot simpler. And so obviously the NHS were interested in it because FODMAP costs the NHS a lot of money, because it's technically a business. You have to have a license to be able to train FODMAP dietitians, and the courses are expensive. And so, I would say it 100% will work. But again, I can only say that with conviction because I've seen it happen so many thousands of times.
Yeah.
So yeah, if anybody's got any questions, then let me know, mate.
Yeah, that's great. So you don't recommend a fecal transplant then?
Not particularly, no.
But in all seriousness, they've had good results of C. diff, right?
Yeah. So there is some research around this area, actually, and some of it looks useful. However, I don't know. If your doctor says to you, look, fecal transplant, I don't know. Unless it's a question of you're going to die or have this done, I reckon most people are just going to opt to not do it, because it is as it sounds, and it sounds horrific.
Yeah.
But like you said, there is some research in that area. Some of it looks promising, some of it not so much.
Yeah, I mean the results of so when I was at an MNU conference last year, they mentioned with C. diff it was really promising, but they weren't sure at the moment. So her prediction was that there's going to be loads of pop-up clinics saying have a fecal transplant to cure this and this, and they're not sure whether what else you're carrying over. So be it tendencies to have more anxiety, depression, like turn on other stuff that we don't know about. Because I don't. Quite recently in the US, someone died from a fecal transplant, and they paused a lot of research in it due to that, which is
That's
quite
crazy.
amazing. Yeah,
it's crazy. But you're probably right. Like, because there is a little bit of research, like there will be some people that will try to make some money off that.
Yeah.
The whole DNA testing is a good example.
Yeah.
Technology isn't quite there yet for the DNA testing to actually be useful yet. It's getting there, but it's not quite useful yet. But despite that fact, we have all of these commercial companies selling expensive DNA testing kits, promising all sorts of stuff. Most of it being nonsense.
Yeah, with the DNA one, I can't remember who did it. Someone in the fitness industry, they sent off multiple ones with their same, like, for their own, like did a real, like, and they came back with different results quite often. It just shows, like, it would, again, might depend on what day you do it, like, or is it just random? I don't know.
Like I said, the technology's not there yet. In 99% of the cases, so if you take a DNA test for obesity, they write back to you and say, hey, guess what? You need to go on a low-calorie diet, eat some protein, do some exercise.
Yeah.
All right, amazing. Matt Fruci could have told me that already. Like, do you know what I mean? So there will be some fecal transplant clinics. As long as you're not running them, then it's all good.
No, I'm not. No. Fecal transplants and DNA tests coming soon.
Fecal Fruci. It's got a ring to it, though.
It does, yeah. That'll be type in www. I've already bought the domain now. Hopefully that's not taken. Yeah. Cool. I think that's everything. We've covered a lot there, so I think that's more than enough to get going with, and simple, practical things to do, which is always good.
Hopefully it's recorded, so good to catch up, mate. I'll catch you in a bit, I guess.
Yes. Cheers for that, Mike.
Cheers, mate.
Take care.